What is up, guys? Clay Enjoyer here, and it's time to enjoy. And in this video, I have a rectangular shaped burrito. I was gonna eat that burrito, but it looks a little bit too shiny right now, so I need to give it a clay shell to make it look more edible. And just like shells, this clay layer is also very fragile and annoying. Once I get all the layers of clay on the ship, I can start smoothing it out. And instead of being just a ship, this is going to be a big ship with 3 Gs. And I don't know if any of you guys knew, but Warhammer 40k ships, they're so big that even the average sized ones are like 2 to 3 miles long, which is absolutely insane, and the bigger ones are like 5 to 6 miles long. But I don't actually know how big this ship would be. I think it's gonna be around the 4-mile mark, because I'm gonna make this one like a battleship, I think. I'm not exactly sure which one this is. I just found some cool art and I was like, hey, this is what I'm gonna copy. With the front cone done, I can blend it into the rest of the body of the massive spaceship so I can make it look like it's one piece instead of two. But I am going to actually split it into different pieces with some extra bits of clay that will act as the trim for this bumper ram thing. I doubt it's actually a ram, it's probably just detail, because I doubt in the 40k universe they're concerned with aerodynamics. To make this ram thing look a little bit more interesting, I can add some spikes on either side to act as fancy metal trim, before then adding a big ladder on either side of the ship that will eventually hold its many guns, or massive cannons. I'm not entirely sure what they are, but they are powerful, followed by another set of ladders on top, because why not? But then again, this is also the Gothic architecture-esque, so basically it's just so much detail that if you start to look at it too much, your eyes will start to hurt. Emphasis on all these extra lines of clay that I'm adding here, and all the extra details I'm adding in, because I want this to look as busy as possible. I can carve in some lines to these little pieces of clay here to add the aforementioned detail, as well as on the other side, before adding another big but also little cannon on top, before then adding another strip of clay down the middle to split both sides. Also, I may not show it on camera all the time, but obviously, if I do something on one side, I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. I just want to get the perspective flipped a little bit, so it looks like I'm working on both sides instead of just one. I have no idea what scale I'm actually going for, but for the moment, I'm only putting one giant cannon in each slot, because there is a good amount of space for it. But what I will figure out after a little bit of readjustment is 2 cannons can actually fit in both holes instead of only one, which is like double the firepower, because big guns go boom. Just like the top of the ship, I can do the same thing to the bottom, with a bunch of strips of clay which are roughly symmetrical and lined up with each other, before then getting blended in, and then tiny other rectangles added to that as well, because I want it to look equal, or at least close enough to the same on either side to make it look more symmetrical, and to make your eyes bleed, add detail, like I'm doing right here. But unlike the top, the bottom needs a giant world-ending laser, which is where this hole will be used for later. But don't worry, it actually won't be a world-ending laser, because I think that would violate a certain Geneva conventions. But it's really just an RGB light strip that I'm very excited to add later, along with this back piece of aluminum foil and clay, which will act as the command center slash bridge of the spaceship. I don't actually know what the quote-unquote bridge means, but it sounds correct. Then I can make a little temple on top, because apparently that's what 40k ships look like, before then giving it a bunch of extra details, which are basically just strips and random rectangles and squares wherever I feel like, as long as they're somewhat symmetrical, because details equals good, and the more details the better. Up to this point, the ship is pretty much done, but I do need to make some more details on the sides, which are pretty much the same thing, because I want this to look kinda similar to the main part of the ship, but I also need to make it look incredibly busy, and I didn't really know how to do that, so that's what I'm doing here, with even more rectangles and even more rectangle pieces of clay to act as trim, and extra detail like this trim right here, which doesn't want to stick, but whatever, because whenever I'm trying to film something, it doesn't like cooperating, which is fantastic, but usually I cut it out. But this video is so late, I'm just trying to get it out as fast as possible, because I need to start working on the next one. But with that detail done, I can start adding the back pieces, which are giant thrusters, which I know they're super special. They're just circles with circle holes pressed into them to make it look like they're not hollow, with this back bottom panel attached to make the bottom side not look boring and make it look the same as the rest. I can finally start the painting, but because I thought the painting process would be annoying, I can spray paint it in gray to act as a nice base, before then dry brushing light gray over everything to highlight the details. I'll end up doing a little bit more dry brushing off camera as well, because I wasn't really certain that the dry brushing was actually doing anything, because I couldn't really see it that well. But something that I know I can see is this lighter gray directly on the edges, which is supposed to represent sunlight or just something, but in the void of space, I don't know if you would actually see any light or not, but I don't know. That's not what I'm concerned about, but what I am concerned about is painting this whole rammer thing a bright red, because that was what the picture said to do. Now, since the ship is almost done, I want to give it a little bit of variation, because I thought it was flat, which I can use for this light gray, and in the guns and inside the thrusters, this super dark gray, which is practically black, but it is technically dark gray. But to give it a little bit more detail, I can also paint the hole in a lighter red and stipple that around a little bit to try and make it look like I blended it in and make it look a little bit smoother. But with that done, with this funny little base, that is going to be what this ship attaches to. But I need to paint it black, because this wood is an ugly color. Once the base is dried, I can then attach the ship, which is pretty straightforward. I just put a little bit of wire on top so that the ship had something to sit on, so it would be supported and it would be less loose. I did glue it in off camera though, but just for the shot it looks better. Then with the lights in place that I had to do off camera because they were fidgeting, I can flashbang you. Surprise! Finally, all I needed left to do is add the cotton balls to cover up the laser and make it look more natural. But what I do need to do is separate the cotton balls so it doesn't look so weird and make the laser look more natural instead of artificial, whatever that means. But with that done, it's time for the reveal. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe for more big ship laser go boom videos next. Also, comment which color you think is your favorite. I'm not gonna do anything with said information, but I want to hear from you guys what your favorite color is for the lights. In my opinion, my favorite is this blue one right here. Alright, see you in the next video. Bye.